High banking involves working out of the river or in a dry area. By definition, you're usually working high on the bank. That means you don't have access to water, and a lot of the methods that you learned in the earlier videos are not going to apply here in the same way. You will use a lot of your same skills here, but you're going to have to apply them differently. Crevicing, for example, when we did it in the water, it was easy because you just pop open a rock, you sweep up the dirt on the bottom, you suck it out, it's easy. Up here, there's no water. So you can either haul water in, dump buckets on top of the rock, wash it down in that way, or you can try using a different method. We've worked in this spot for quite a while now, and we've been able to narrow down where the gold is within a small window. We know that it's up here on the bank, mostly in an area about 8 feet out of the water, and because there's a hydraulic mine that used to be up there, which is where they took a giant fire hose, aimed at the mountain, and just literally washed the mountain away. And they caught most of the big gold there, but they weren't even interested in the little stuff. And so a lot of it washed down and washed right over this bedrock here, and most of it got caught in these little cracks, and the rest eventually wound up in the river, got washed downstream. What we want to do is find the cracks that were here when the hydraulicing happened, crack them open, and get the gold out of it. Now, I have information that's pretty reliable that the club outing that worked here had about 20 people come out here, and they found about an ounce in about a day. Now, I figure I should be able to work at that and get about 3 to 4 grams a day out of that. In practice, I haven't come anywhere close to that, so I don't know what I'm doing wrong, if my information is wrong. So we want to crack open the rocks where the water would have washed over them and dropped little pieces of gold down inside of it. Now, most of this is going to be super fine gold, flour gold. We have some larger flakes that I found in here, but most of it's going to be really small. So we need to be able to catch that fine gold, and I'll show you my sluice setup for that here in a minute. But first, let's show you how to get the dirt out of here. Here's a typical example. Now, this wouldn't work in all kinds of bedrock because some of the kinds of bedrock that are just like one big chunk, there's not any cracks in there for gold to hide in, so it would have moved someplace else. Here, you can see the seams where moss has grown up between the little cracks here. And this is actually quite easy to break off, even with a small bar like this. You can pop off big pieces of bedrock and big slabs. What you're going to want to do is pull that off and hold this over a bucket, drop it in there, and then scrape off all the dirt that you can into the bucket with a wire brush or with water if you have water handy. And then we're going to come back over this and scrape it down good. You can use a pick, you can use a larger crowbar, whatever is necessary. But you want to get into rocks where you can see dirt in between the cracks like this. If you're not seeing piles of dirt like this in between your rocks, you're probably not breaking open the right rocks. You have to have some sediment in there for gold to have been able to find its way in there. Otherwise, you're breaking open the rock for no reason. So you want to break open rocks that give you dirt like this, and you want to scrape this dirt off or wash it off, and then this is what you're going to find your gold in. Most of the time, if you're going to work something dry, you need to stay dry. If you're going to work it wet, you need to stay wet. You can't really mix back and forth because one method doesn't work well for the other way. And if you're going to stay dry, you're working with mud now, and that makes it hard to use a wire brush like this, and also hard to classify later. So I'm choosing to stay dry in this so that I can use my vacuum cleaner. So we're going to get these rocks clean, including the moss, because the moss acts as a catchment as well. Depending on how old the moss is, it catches very fine gold, and if the gold had washed across it, there can be really good stuff in this moss. Now obviously this doesn't work everywhere. And most rivers, you don't find that much in the mosses or in the stuff way out of the bank. There's a very specific reason why we find gold here, is because of that hydraulic mine. So you need to know the history of your area to do well. And that's where getting information comes in handy. Talking to miners who have worked in the area a lot gives you a really good background of what's going on. Now, they're going to lie to you, because if they knew where the gold was, they'd be getting it themselves. But a lot of them are nicer, and they are willing to help you with what little they do know. And you can usually put those pieces together and at least get a picture of what had happened before you got here. Because most of the time we're not really competing against Mother Nature or trying to find out where she hid the gold. We're trying to compete against other miners and figure out what gold they already found and what gold they left behind. There used to be massive amounts of gold here. So much so that they could be really inefficient and get gold by what we can consider very sloppy retention methods of like 60 or 70% of the gold that they pulled out. And yet, still make really good money off of that. So we're working at trying to find their loss, and the stuff that they missed is good enough for us most of the time. We just got to find out where the other miners from today haven't dredged or cleaned or in other ways stolen the gold that we want. So I'm going to get this rock cleaned off, and then we'll show you what it looks like then. So as you can see, I've broken off a lot of this already. Now with this fractured bedrock, you can usually go down a long ways, and after a while there's a point at which you're no longer really accomplishing anything. And generally that point is when you stop seeing sediment in between the layers. You start cracking off rocks deeper and deeper down into this bedrock, and usually you're going to run out of mud. You're just going to get to a point where you're just cracking open clean rocks, and you're wasting your time at that point. Like if I pop this rock open right here, let's see. It's coming. Okay, there it goes. When you look inside of there, this rock is clean. And the only sediment that I see in there is stuff that fell in as I popped it open. So I'm wasting my time if I go to clean that rock out anymore. So we're going to vacuum off the top of this. First we're going to scoop it out as much as we can with a scoop, because anything you can do with a scoop is going to be faster than you can do it with a vacuum. So take out the scoop, put it in the bucket. Now you're going to run across clumps of grass like this. And you're going to want to take these as you run them through your sluice or your pan or whatever and break them up so that any gold that would have gotten caught in these roots gets a chance to settle out. Once you get all the big rocks out of here, and you get to the point where you're no longer getting a full scoop each time, we're going to turn on our vacuum and finish the job right. This is going to make some noise, obviously. There. And you're just going to hit everything you can and make this bedrock spotless. Shake out the filter as best we can. You're going to not get all of it, but you get most of it. And then dump that in there. I'm only talking about, I don't know, a pint of dirt. So it's not that it's that much material to work, which is the nice thing about crevicing and popping rocks open. But there could be as much gold in here as there is in full bucketfuls a lot of other places. So we're going to go pan this out and find out. First we're going to classify it so it's easier to pan it. So I've classified this down to 1/4 inch to make it easier to pan it. Now, as with everything you're working with dry, when you actually go to get it wet, you've got to get it thoroughly wet before you start panning it. And you're going to have a lot of very, very fine stuff, because usually when you're working with dry material, it gets very, very silty in there, and it doesn't wash it away like it does in the river. So you're going to have to get it all wet all the way down to the bottom of the pan, trying not to wash any of it out as you do so. And it's going to make your water a lot siltier and muddier very quickly compared to river mud. So I can feel the bottom of that pan, there's no clumps in there. Now we can start shaking it. At this point, it's just like regular panning. So you can already see some gold showing up here, 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 and here. Another piece right up in there. A couple pieces of lead. And quite a few smaller specks that are not going to show up on the camera very well. But for the amount of material we processed, this isn't bad. So you see this big open barren area here. What you just saw me do with that rock, we did with all of this yesterday. We did about a 6 by 10 area. And this all looked like this grassy, mossy surface stuff here. And these crevices down in here were full of dirt. And we cleaned the dirt out, we ran the dirt through the sluice, we cleaned the crevices out, we broke them open with a pick. We did everything we could to get down here to where the gold would have stopped. And we didn't do too badly. I'll show you that in a few minutes. But for right now, I want to show you the process. When you have a little bit more dirt, you want to get in there with a pick and loosen up the dirt first like this. And you can loosen the bedrock up as well. If you have loose fractured bedrock, you can usually use it to pull it apart, like I'm doing this rock right here. Same thing. Clean this rock off, toss it over the hill, and get underneath it. You may need a wire brush to clean up some of this stuff. You'll follow these crevices back into the wall and you'll find big pockets of dirt, and that's your material that you're looking for. Obviously the rocks themselves don't have gold in them, it's the cracks between them. So now we have this pile of big rocks that's pretty loose, and a lot of little dirt between them. Like this was a nice 1/2 inch thick crevice that goes all the way down here. That's where our gold would have collected. All this fractured bedrock on top would have been a perfect catchment for gold, so we're going to break it up as much as we can and drag it out of here. Now that we have it like that, we can dry classify it into my bucket classifier. The classifier works better when it's wet than it does when it's dry, but if you get it dry enough, the stuff will fall off the rocks for the most part. You're going to lose a little bit more than you would otherwise, but you can do it so much faster than hauling water from the river to where you're working that it's usually just time better spent digging more and losing a little bit. And you're not going to lose big stuff. It'll just be really fine flour gold that gets stuck to the rocks and doesn't break off as you do this. So you get it halfway full. You do need to classify a little bit less material at a time and give it a little bit of a twist as you go down like this. And that means when you take this over to your sluice, your high banker, you're going to have a lot less material to carry each time. So you're going to be able to carry more good stuff each trip and it'll have less overall work. These big pieces I won't try to run through the sluice, so just pick them up and throw them out of here. When you work with this volume of material, you're not going to try to clean off every rock. That would take forever. It's more important just to move more material. If you do see a rock with a big chunk of dirt on it, obviously bang it off. But mostly you're just trying to get it out of here so you can get down to the better stuff, which should mostly be on the bottom. So we do that, and we get as many buckets full as we have, and then we run our high banker.